We can easily become convinced that when in that darkness, the darkness is all there is, and we're never going to get out of it, we're never going to see the light again. We may not even remember what the light feels like. Reality itself is not built from an energy of suffering. If suffering was all there is, you would never know happiness, and therefore you would never know suffering. That means you can experience both energies, and if you can experience both energies, for the last couple of weeks in the UK, we have just had completely grey skies. It's just like no sun coming through, just completely kind of like dreary. And yesterday, we were finally blessed with blue skies and just sunlight once again. And I just got to start off by saying I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful to be able to experience sunsets once again. And the last month of my life personally has been quite rocky mentally wise, quite challenging. I've been going through a very challenging cycle, a cycle where my mind's been very active, very overactive, and I've been pretty ungrounded. Very ungrounded, if I'm honest with myself. But one thing that's been very prevalent to me through all of this is just the reminder that we have cycles in life. We have periods where life can be very challenging, everything can seem very dark, and we can easily become convinced that when in that darkness, the darkness is all there is, and we're never going to get out of it, we're never going to see the light again. We may not even remember what the light feels like. And I just want to remind you that just because a period of life may seem very, very challenging, you may seem completely lost, depressed, hopeless, anxious, angry. It may seem like things will never get better. They will, and they can. Just as the night isn't permanent, your suffering isn't either. Yes, there may be things you need to work through. You may be being called to have a look at some very wounded parts of yourself that are obviously being inflamed. But just know that life at its core isn't perpetuating suffering. Reality itself is not built from an energy of suffering. You can suffer within reality, but you can also feel joy. You can also feel happiness. If suffering was all there is, you would never know happiness, and therefore you would never know suffering. Because you can't know suffering without happiness and vice versa. You can't distinguish between the two energies without contrast. And if there's contrast, that means you can experience both energies. And if you can experience both energies, both can exist within this framework of reality. Essentially what I'm saying is, life isn't here to punish you. There's not some malevolent force that is causing your life to be horrible, attacking you, pulling you down. My mind has told me the same story before. Oh, this is so unfair. Oh, why me? Oh, But then I've had moments of peace. I've had moments of joy. I've had moments like this, where I'm just watching a beautiful sunset and recognizing that if I hadn't gone through this challenging period in my life recently, I wouldn't have learnt and had the powerful reminder that suffering isn't permanent. I wouldn't have had the powerful opportunities to heal these parts of myself that were being inflamed, because if they weren't being inflamed, they would have still been subconsciously just influencing me from the background. I wouldn't have been given the opportunity to grow. You see, because I finally feel, after these last couple of months, that I'm coming back. Like I'm finally settling back into me again. A new me. I feel like I'm being reborn. But I wouldn't have had the opportunity to be reborn. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to grow stronger. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to uncover what is not working for me anymore. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to evolve, to heal, if I wasn't suffering, if the things that weren't working for me, the belief systems that were out of alignment, that were creating suffering, if they hadn't have become inflamed, I wouldn't have ever even had the chance to let them go, because I would have been completely unaware of them. And then I would have stayed the same. My life would have repeated the same, and I would have still been taking actions and repeating subconscious cycles that perhaps were keeping me away from living my best life, living a life of my wildest dreams. You can't have growth without a catalyst. You're suffering, even though a month ago I would have argued against this as well, when I was in the depths of it. But your suffering is serving you. It is teaching you something. Suffering is always telling you that there is some part of you, some aspect, some trauma, some belief system that isn't seeing things clearly. It is perpetuating a narrative that is in conflict with maybe where you want to go in life. A desire you have, a dream you have, a vision you have, but you have a narrative that says, oh, that's impossible, that's hopeless, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, I don't deserve that. But that negative narrative, it's an illusion. A part of you that has learnt something, that has assumed something because of a negative experience you've had in the past, or perhaps a belief system you've been told by a loved one, by your parents, by a friend, by a teacher, and your mind has just absorbed it in and gone, oh yeah, that must be true. I trust them, I believe them. And now you're at a phase where you're ready to outgrow that belief. You're ready to realize that, oh, maybe I am worthy. Maybe I am lovable. Maybe I can have what I want. Maybe it is time for me to take that step, to take that leap, to be brave. Maybe it's time to stop believing in this narrative that is holding me back. And how do you know you're there? Because this belief system is actively causing you to be miserable now. To the point where it's getting unbearable, to the point where life is starting to feel hopeless. The temperature of the water has increased to a level that is almost unbearable now. You've been fine with it all these years, perhaps, because maybe that negative belief has been serving you in some way all these years. But you truly have outgrown it, as if you were slowly growing in a box and now you're pushing against the corners, like a caterpillar in a cocoon. It's become unbearable, you're suffocating, because it's time for you to go beyond. It's time for you to evolve. And just like we have the day and the night, and both have their values, this darkness, this cycle of your life has been serving you. Because how would you have been able to see the stars without the darkness? How would have you been able to see what is not serving you without the suffering? If there's one thing I want you to remember from this message, it is that no matter how convinced you may be, no matter how much your mind may tell you that your suffering is permanent, that there's no way out, that this darkness is forever, I want you to remember that it isn't. Because as I was saying, if it was, you would never, ever have experienced any capacity for joy in your life, ever. And you wouldn't even know that you're in darkness, because you wouldn't know light. Remember that fundamental fact, and you'll be okay. Have a beautiful day, guys.